Your proposal, as I understand it, is that using school food and improvements in school food would be a good vehicle for the food policy advocacy community in New York to advance as a priority in this next period. And your arguments for that are it has a big impact on well-being and health and perhaps equity, that it cuts across a lot of sectors, and that it might appeal to the incoming administration as well as people on the city council. So sort of taking those premises as a starting point, I recall from the discussions we had in the New York City Food Forum, there was always a kind of tension between looking for unifying themes and all the folks who were working on hunger doing their thing, and community gardens doing their thing, community-supported agriculture. And I wonder if you have thoughts, both from the experience that we've been through in the last year and other organizing experiences, how do we find the right balance between recognizing that there are many diverse strands on the ground working on issues that are important to them with trying to bring people together so we have a stronger voice? How do we negotiate that tightrope?
That is the $64,000 question. Doesn't $64,000 sounds very little, doesn't it? Shows you how old I am. That's chump change. I think it's an age-old problem, and it's a problem that every movement has. That you have a range of voices within that movement, and they differ in terms of what their core concerns are. And so you want to be able to touch on all of the concerns to make the tent as large as possible. But you do get them, when the rubber hits the road, you do get these differences. So when the hunger advocates, for example, say, look, we want quantity, we want quality, we definitely want quality. The hunger community does not oppose quality. I want to say that loud and clear. They want quality for their people, there's no doubt, for all of our people. But when it comes down to it, when the choice is, well, do you want everyone to get this much food, or do you want everyone to get a little bit less food but a better quality, they tend to go for, we want more, so the quality will be a little bit less. And the health people will say, well, we feel that hunger is a scourge and we want to get rid of hunger, but so is malhealth. Poor health is a scourge. And if we don't start changing the food that all of us are eating, then we're all going to be sick, and we're going to have the consequences of being sick. So,
and school food really is one of the interventions that addresses both sides of that, right?
It does,
which is what makes it one of the things that makes it a good issue.
Yeah, but there's, after you pay for labor costs, there's $1 per child per meal. That's not a lot of money to spend on food. It's a very small amount, so it is hard to get quality food. So it's a contradiction. I think we have to work it out on the ground all the time.
But I'm maybe going to push you to be a little specific. So how do we do that? Let's say that our goal is 4 years from now, school lunch will be at least beginning to be transformed. What do we need to do? What do the folks in this room need to do, do you think, tomorrow, next week, next year, to go from where we are, grouping with a long list of priorities to one to say that we can come together to work on this? How do you see that happening? And I know these are big questions.
They are.
Later we'll invite you all to give your thoughts on those.
I mean, I think that the health and hunger push, dialectic, is one that is always going to be with us. I mean, I will say this, and I come out on the health side, because I think that we keep promising we want more. We keep asking for more, and we keep getting less, partly because we're so willing to settle for crappy food. So I don't really have a good answer to that, except, excuse me, for us to struggle it out as we're in these coalitions, and a lot of it's case by case. So I think that there has to be a fair amount of trust. I think that too often the hunger people feel that the health people will just say healthy, healthy, organic food and forget the quantity issue. And I don't think that that's accurate, but I think it's a fear. And I think that the hunger people fear that the health people fear that the hunger people will just drop any kind of quality demand to just keep the pantry bags rolling, or in this case, the food being ladled out. I think the only way we can work on this is through activism and trust. You may be looking for a better answer than that, but
Right.
I really can't think of one. Maybe other people will have a better answer.
Two other questions. So you made a strong case for trying to bring people together around this issue and why that issue was a good one. Really two questions. One is, what do you think are some other issues that have that potential in addition to school food, that would have a population impact, that would serve to mobilize people, that would maybe be of resonance in this new administration? And then if you could talk a little bit about what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of a multi-issue movement versus a movement focused on one or two issues.
Let me take the second one. Do you mean multi-issue meaning multi-issue?
No, I'm talking now about food, a food movement that says that decides against the path you were recommending of bringing people together and focusing on school food and says, here are 4 or 5 things we're going to work on. What are the advantages and disadvantages of that approach? Because, folks, these are the decisions we're going to have to make in the coming months, right? Are we going to come together around one issue? Are we going to say that there are 4 or 5 issues and we'll figure out how to work together? And what's the right balance? And how do we have those discussions in order to be able to realize this window of opportunity?
I mean, I think that we should go for the whole enchilada. I think we should say we want to see a food policy that's transformative, that speaks to economic development first, because I think it's very, very important, probably most important. I also think it's a winning suit to start with, to say we need to look at some kind of overall planning where you take a look at all this money that is circulating, that's in the system already. We're not talking about creating new money, we're talking about looking at institutional money, and I know so many of you know these stats, but I will, just remind you that school food, the Office of School Food prepares 860,000 meals a day. That is a lot of buying power. And there are a lot of other institutions too. I think it's about 1 million meals a day that the city alone is actually preparing. They're purchasing a lot of food. But it's not always done in a planful and thoughtful way that leads to economic development for the city. So I think that is first and foremost. I would like us as a group, as a movement, to say, take a look at the money that is involved with food in the city and think about its potential, both in terms of institutional food, but also in terms of the food industry in general, the restaurant industry. So we have so many people coming into the city and eating. If we had guidelines in the state and the city, and that's another thing, we have to work with the state. And here's a great opportunity, if we're working with the state, to be able to pass legislation that will advance farmers, advance food processes in the entire state, that can really address some of the economic depression that's going on in New York State, and sort of pushing farmers into leasing their mineral rights to fracking, energy companies fracking the land and destroying the potential of being able to grow healthy food in New York State, and that's how desperate people are. But to look at this as in a centralized planning way and say, what kind of legislation can we pass that will increase local sourcing, that will expand the food economy, that will grow good jobs? And I think that again, Hunter Food Policy, Good Food, Good Jobs document is so helpful, because they lay out how do you create the workforce also behind these good food jobs. So to take a look at that and see what we could do as a city and potentially as a state to see how we can build the food economy so that it has economic development, health, environmental sustainability, and addresses hunger issues all at once. So I'd like that to be our first approach. But I think our second approach should be school food. I don't think that, I don't want to take any wind out of our sails, but I don't see de Blasio as moving forward in that kind of sort of very, very masterful way in looking at the whole food economy right away. I think he would want to have some more, not that this would be small, but smaller wins that would be extremely popular and perhaps easier. I think universal school meals would be bureaucratically easier to produce something right away that people would say, that's great, and we love that, and we're all behind it. So I think that's I would say go big, and then if we're not moving forward on that, go smaller.